Wanted to introduce a guy I've met. I actually have hung out in his town a little bit. I actually went up there for Labor Day. If you haven't been to Schuyler for Labor Day, you got to go, don't you? I'll let Pat explain that if he's got the time. Pat's got a lot of things on his mind. He's got about, I don't know how much time he's got to speak. I'll start giving him the slash mark if he goes too long. But Pat Flynn, Pat, come on up. I wanted to introduce you to this crowd. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. I'd just like to thank Americans for Prosperity to sponsoring this event. It's a great time, it's really good when someone steps up and an organization steps up to promote freedom and liberty. And and I like the name, Cut Spending Now. And I say cut spending now by $1 trillion. That's what I'm up to. Whatever our deficit is, that's how much we cut it. That's how we do business here today. So what I will say is this. I am from Schuyler. We have a great parade. You're all welcome on Labor Day. And I'm the only businessman in the race. I am a businessman. I believe the majority of Americans are more conservative than not. Unfortunately, our country is not going that way because our elected officials are not leading that way. That's a big issue. So, what I'm saying is this. What's the number one thing we do when we get to Washington? The first question to ask is psychological. Is America ready to cut spending for real? Because if we cannot overcome that hurdle, we aren't going to win. And so, if you take a look at this debt ceiling situation, 67% of Americans were in favor of not raising the debt ceiling and were for cutting government spending. That means, yes, we are ready for the pain. I did some Facebook situations, and I got a resounding, yes, we're ready for pain, which is important. Number two, what our elected officials should do, knowing that, number one, President Obama is not going to be for cutting government spending. That's all there's to it. Okay, there's not one hair on his head that believes in that. And so we have to acknowledge that. But what we need to do is go to every House and Senate member and say this. We are going to take this message to the people of America. We have to remember that we, the people, have the power if we exercise that. So, what I would do is say this. Okay, fellas, ladies and gents, we are going to take this to the people. Our president's not going to be for this, but your constituents are going to be for this. And if you don't want to get on board, that's fine. There's an election coming up in this coming May, and they can just boot you out right there, and they will. There's a lot of unrest, like we heard. What we would be doing the whole time is this. We would be backing President Obama's back up against the wall with the people, and I guarantee you, if he doesn't want to do this, he would react wrong. They always do. He is not for us. He is not good, period. So what am I proposing? Like I say, we need a 30% reduction in the federal government. How do we do that? Well, it's been done before. Number one, Harry Truman, who's a Democrat, did it in 1946. The thing is this. The first year he cut government by 40%. The next year, another 40%. The next year, 20%. Federal government went from 46% of GDP down to 9%. Now I know why a lot of people liked him. But I'm after the government regulations. These regulatory agencies have usurped the power of our elected officials. They've taken away our liberties, and they are creating a culture of dependence and destruction. The first 5 regulatory agencies we need to go after is, number one, the EPA. We need a 70% reduction. There's not a business owner in America that wouldn't be for that proposal. Number 2, Department of Energy. Eliminate it. We've had that department since 1977. We haven't had a refinery in America since. We wouldn't even have this XL pipeline discussion if we had refineries in America. Number 3, HUD, eliminate it. Housing should be a private matter, not a public matter. Number 4, Department of Education, eliminate it. That's only been around since 1979, and it's hard to believe a lot of us got an education without it. One gentleman said to me, he says, well, Pat, what would you replace that with? I said, well, how about parents, school boards, communities, and states if we need it? The next department is the Department of Labor, 70% reduction. Now, what can we all do today? I'm saying to get through what lies ahead of us today, we are going to have to become the greatest generation ever by our attitudes and actions. How do we do that? Number 1 is prayer. If one thinks America became America without the reliance on prayer, they'd be duly mistaken. When America declared her independence from the British Empire in 1776, our first commander-in-chief called for prayer, fasting, and humble supplication to the Lord for his continued blessings. So I'll stick with America's greatest president as my leader. Number 2, we're going to have a constitutional revolution by electing representatives who can lead us back to the principles and values of our founding fathers. And number 3, we're going to all have to walk the walk and become a virtuous man and a virtuous nation. In summary, Abraham Lincoln said at Gettysburg, he said, we are testing whether this nation can long endure, and America is definitely at the test today. When historians look back at these times, will we be known as a spoiled, complacent, one-day wonder, or the land of the free, the home of the brave? The time is now for we, the people, to stand up and free ourselves of the self-imposed crisis and return to the principles of independence. Cut spending now. Thank you. Thank Americans for prosperity. God bless America.
Thanks, Pat. Good to see you.